The controllers use system-exclusive messages to talk to the Kronos and control the CX3 drawbars. In this particular model, only can be done by using a traditional 5-pin MIDI cable. So you need to use this to make the connection. Plug one end of the cable into the MIDI out port and the other end into the MIDI in port of your Kronos. If your Kronos MIDI in with the 5 pins is in use by another MIDI controller, then I would suggest getting a MIDI Solutions merger box. These are the things that we'll be discussing the Roland A800 Pro. 8 buttons, 9 sliders, 9 buttons, 9 encoders, as well as these 4 buttons here. To get to the different control maps, starting on 1, you can control the Kronos in combination mode for timbre 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and all the way up to timbre 7, and also a backdoor timbre 16 for control map 8, just in case you want to have an organ in the last timbre. You can also control all the levels of the timbre with control map 9. I mean, all the volumes of the timbres within your combination, 1 through 8, and then 9 through 16. And then we have your program control maps from 11 to 19, and we'll get into the specifics of what those do. Expression pedal input, which I have mapped to control the expression of your Leslie simulator, a Leslie speaker inside the Kronos. So you can plug that in, and it works best with the Roland EV5 with this control set to 0 so that you can really get the grind out of that Leslie organ. Let's go to a initialized combination. Turn our controller on. By default, it usually starts at the MIDI channel, and again, by twisting this knob, you can go from 1 to 16 very easily. You can leave it on 1 for the most part, unless you have your organ on a particular MIDI channel of your choice, other than 1. Using this arrow button, we go over to Control Map. This editor software doesn't let me edit Control Map 0, so that's going to stay as the default Sonar Act map. If you have a combination that includes a CX3 organ like this one, and let's go in there and copy it into the timbre. Ooh. Now it's in timbre 1. In the control surface, in the tone adjustments, all of these controls are mapped to all of these controls here on the controller. So if you start to move these faders, it will control in real time the drawbars on the organ. And by pressing this row of buttons, and they're backlit, you're able to turn off and on the various switches for your Leslie and organ settings. There's another row of 6 buttons here, and you can see me turning those off and on by these 8 pad buttons over on this side. The knobs, of course, will control the various settings that these virtual knobs are mapped to. Amp gain, expression, overtone, key click, even some EQ settings. Now these knobs and faders and buttons unfortunately are not able to be mapped to negative values. So as you can see, when I use the knobs on the Kronos, I can go from -10 to +10. Focus, please. Focus. But on the controller, I can only go from 0 to positive 10. So that's one of the limitations of the controller, and it's a slightly off-putting, but it's not the end of the world. If you need to have the EQ go in negatives, you'll have to just use the Kronos for that. By moving the faders here, now the next control map, and again when you press these buttons it kind of shows you a display of what you're controlling, and it gets more specific with the program control maps. But since this is mapped particularly to timbre 1, these controls will not work if your organ is in timbre 2, which is why there are more control maps for combi timbre 2. So if for instance your organ was not in timbre 1 but you have it mapped to timbre 2, we've got that covered. And likewise for timbre 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 16. Combination timbre 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if for instance you had a combination like this one, and you wanted, and all of the first timbres are taken up, and you wanted to sneak an organ into timbre 16, just to test it out, you now have it inserted into a pre-made combination, and control map 8 will take care of the control surface for this particular timbre for you, so you can still control the drawbars. And now I'm going to show you what control map 9 does. This is timbres 1 through 9, and this controls the levels of all your timbres. It no longer controls the drawbars for your CX3 programs inside your combination. This is just for levels, for mutes, and for panning. When you pan, there's a virtual click in the middle, so when you approach the center, it will automatically click to center, so that way you don't have to be so precise, and it's not frustrating trying to get it exactly in the center. With these particular control maps now, these buttons have been changed to turn off and on your eye effects 1 through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So that might be something you find useful. So that's the first 8 timbres. And the next control map 10 takes care of the other half of the timbres 9 through 16. And again, there's your mute controls. And your eye effects 1 through 12. And you can see those turning off and on if we go to the eye effects tab, and up here we can see them turning off and on. For the next control map, we get into our program mode control maps. So 11 up to 19 no longer work in combination mode, but are used for program mode. So if your control surface, you like to have it on Karma, and you're switching between Karma scenes, then these drawbars will no longer be mapped, these faders, to the drawbars on your organ program. Only if you have it on Tone Adjust and EQ setting will then your faders on the Kronos start to take control of the drawbars within the program. But that's okay, because even if you are in Karma mode, doesn't matter, because with this control map, you're able to control the drawbars of your organ, no matter which page you're in, whether it be percussion or you're over here. These will always be mapped to the 9 drawbars here on this program map, control map. But what if we wanted to control the lower drawbars? By pressing A8, you can split the program so that the lower drawbars appear, and the next control map controls the lower drawbars. The split is gone, however, because the settings are not persistent, so you'll need to press that split again to enable it, or you can enable it here on the touchscreen. But now when we move the faders on our MIDI controller, they are mapped to the lower drawbars. Not just splits, these other buttons also do useful functions as well, like the wheel brake. Or how fast the wheel brake goes. Much faster. And this button, when you press it, gives you an idea of what it does. Percussion assign low, and percussion settings here to turn it on, if it goes on to the upper or lower manual, if it's loud or soft, if the decay is fast or slow, or if the percussion harmonic is the second or the third. So that's very useful buttons over on here. And if you want to see that change real time, you can go over to the percussion tab and see that the effects are changing as we turn off and on these buttons. Also, these buttons here do useful things, such as turning on the chorus and vibrato for the upper and lower, the switching other various Leslie speakers, or settings I mean, and then these knobs will control various things as well. Key click on off, leak level, noise, expression. Here's what I was telling you about that expression pedal. We can do Leslie fast or slow, the same way we do it on the Kronos. See how when I use the expression pedal, it gets louder and it also adds a little more grit, because that's the expression level. And we can change the minimum for the expression pedal here with the last knob. The next control map is 13, and this controls the EX drawbars. And if we press B1, it will go into the extra drawbar mode, which you can see if we hit the EX1 tab and you go to drawbars and hit this tab here, which will be grayed out usually unless you enable it, which you can do here again, and then this screen will appear, and instead of controlling the upper or lower drawbars, these faders will now control
Whose car is that?
these special ones. You'll also notice that there's these special percussion faders as well, and there's the next control map controls those. Control map 15 starts again with the upper drawbars exactly how it was at the beginning of the program control map maps. And a good example to go for this is Eruption Split. You can see now that the programs are duplicated, the top and the bottom. Before we were controlling this top, which is EXI1. This is EXI2. And we need separate control maps to control these drawbars down here. So if you want to do the lower and enable the split, you're now controlling the lower for EXI2. As you can see, we have all of these settings and a duplicate of these here as well. So you can really start combining things and getting crazy with the organ settings. The next control map, number 18, is a percussion amp and it controls so many things, and again it'll have all the names for everything. Some of these, most of these controls for the buttons remain the same, so they don't switch around so much so that you don't get confused. Like the percussion will always be over here in the program mode, wheel brake will always be up here, and splitting the keyboard so that it doesn't change. The only thing that changes much is the faders from the upper to the lower to the special drawbars here and here, and then this other one here, for the percussion. And let's go into here. Okay. Whoops. I just want to point out that when you're doing the special drawbars, these two groups of 4, it's 8 drawbars, so that leaves the 9th open. So that when we use the 9th, we're scrolling through the different presets right here. The preset 1, 2, 3, 4. You go down all the way to custom, which opens up the option to manipulate which harmonics these custom drawbars will use, and you can scroll through it kind of all at once with these 4 groups of rotary encoders. And this 9th one is used for selecting the presets or a custom. And then you'll be able to control these harmonics as well as these. And then of course the controls the length of the drawbars themselves. So anyway, the last control map is the rotary speaker, and this will only work for EXI1. If you go over here, you'll see that there's a whole mess of things to mess with. And so now all the faders and the rotary controls are mapped to all of these start-stop accelerations, fast and slow speed. And you see the horn value changing when I move the faders, and the rotary knobs for the rotor on your virtual Leslie, as well as the speaker simulation. And if you want that resonant or not, or whatever setting you like. Again, this can all be controlled on the Kronos by selecting with the touchscreen, using the value fader, or twisting the knob. But I thought it would be cool if you could do multiple things at a time and adjust these settings on the fly while you play. So those are the 19 control maps that are loaded on the A800 Pro, just like the 61 5-octave keys on the Kronos. So that'll be it for me. If you found this useful, give us a thumbs up.